Hey everyone, this is Edgar Trucker Niner Garcia. You're listening to the Apps4Truckers podcast. Keep on trucking.
Welcome to the Apps4Truckers podcast. And here is your host, Tim Spence.
Well, thank you, Edgar Trucker Niner Garcia, for that great intro to the podcast. This is Tim Spence with Apps4Truckers.com, and you're listening to podcast number 13. Lucky number 13. I'm willing to go that route. Welcome. First of all, this is a first order of business, is welcome to everyone who has joined us from LiveTrucking.com. I hope you find something good in the podcast. This is a little bit different type of podcast for truckers. This doesn't concentrate on regulations all the time. In fact, we try to stay away from that and make life on the road a lot easier with different things that I can put forth for you. So again, welcome to the LiveTrucking.com, folks. Appreciate you hopping over here and taking a listen. If you had the chance and you ran across something called the Real Life Trucker podcast series on LiveTrucking.com, you will notice that it is an interview with one trucker. We will have an interview with one trucker each week and a wide range. We've had a diverse group to interview, and I'm all good with that. The more diverse, the better, because it actually gives you a better perspective of what this industry is. So we're going to have that every Monday. It will be uploaded to, it'll be on my podcast feed of Apps4Truckers.com. It will be on my YouTube channel and LiveTrucking.com's YouTube channel. It will be on my website and their website as well. So if you would like to be interviewed on that, of course, you can follow the instructions on the YouTube or on the instructions in the show notes for that. You can submit the form, or you can call in on the voicemail line and leave me a message on that. Be happy to get in touch with you about scheduling an interview. So that is really cool. We're going to do 13 episodes per season, and 4 seasons makes a year. Sounds familiar. Might be that's how a year's set up to begin with, so it makes it easy on me. Going to be talking a little bit about apps. We talk some about apps. We have a segment just for that, but the whole thing is whatever applies to making life on the road a lot easier. So we kind of go down that road. We have a regular trucking app that we'll talk about and talk with someone from BigRoad today. We are going to be talking about Google Photos and what they have done recently. The podcast portion, I like to present podcasts that are different than mine so you can actually listen to other people's stuff. Who'd have thunk it? Have a trucking podcast to talk about. Todd McCann, I talked with him the other day, and he said, yeah, go ahead, talk about me. So we did that, and we've got probably a little commentary on the most popular podcast probably in history that I have not mentioned until now. We'll be talking about cereal and the reason why it is relevant to right now. The Apps4Truckers commentary today is brought to you by Ellen Voie of Women in Trucking. We had a great conversation, which you'll hear in a little bit. My special segment of the program is called The Box of Chocolates, because you never know what you're going to get. Yeah, that's from Forrest Gump, and I use it liberally. Today, the Box of Chocolates segment is going to be Jewel Jones of Over the Road Apparel, and we're going to be talking about what they've been kicking around over there about clothing for truckers. New segment. In case you're a regular listener, this one will be new. This segment is called the Road Test segment. Tom Kirk from Road Tested Living is joining me for a quick buzz on the phone. And last of all, the regular segment that we do at the end called the Driving Motivator. What is that? A motivational quote that I've actually pulled out of some research that I've done that may apply to our lives as truckers. So all of this is from the trucker's view, but we're not going to dwell on ELDs. We're not going to dwell on speed limiters. We're not going to talk about the DOT. Not much. Maybe a little. Okay, we'll talk about the DOT because they're not listening. But stay tuned. The first segment that will be coming up is, of course, the featured apps. So hang on tight. Here we go.
Please welcome the featured smartphone app.
Well, first we're going to talk about the non-trucking app, and then we'll get on to BigRoad here in just a minute. The non-trucking app we're speaking of is Google Photos. What Google has done is kind of given Apple a run for their money here because this crosses both operating systems. Google Photos is allowing you to upload all of your photos for no charge and to have access to them anywhere you can get a good Wi-Fi or online connection. What is good about this? Well, the good part is if you are a documenter, which we as truckers, we should be documenters. We should be these type of folks that when something is wrong with the truck, we have no problem. We have the equivalent of a 5-year-old laptop in our hands if you have a smartphone. So actually, if you take the time to take a photo of just about everything that's going on, now you don't have to worry about running into problems with storage on your phone. Google will allow you to upload that. You can set it to just upload it over Wi-Fi so you don't hit your data plan so hard if you don't have unlimited data. Plus, just being able to have all of those at your fingertips. It's not just about getting good photos of your family or photos of the sunset or the places you've been. This is a place where you can keep everything visually related. So you can upload images, kind of like if you've been using Facebook or Google Plus or Pinterest or anything like that to store images that you want to use on your social media or you want to keep for further reference in the future. Now you have a place that you don't have to put it on a social media site. You can actually put it in a place where it is your collection and you can use it. Here's the bad thing, okay? If you're a conspiracy theorist, everything is bad, okay? But if Google has everything, if they have everything, and I just said Google and my phone went nuts, that's one thing that I don't like about Android, is every time I say the G word, my phone erupts. So I know I can turn that off, but personally I use that when I'm going down the road to have hands-free voice activation or to tell it to do things. So if I say the G word, then I don't have to touch the phone and I can tell it to do what I want. It's kind of like Siri for Apple. But nonetheless, if you're a conspiracy theorist, then you're going to be looking at this saying Google is collecting where I'm at. They have facial recognition so they can see everyone who I talk to or everyone I take pictures of. They have the optical recognition to where they can read if it says happy birthday in the photo, like happy birthday Fred or something like that on a birthday cake. They can actually take all that information. They can actually recognize things that are in your photos and mark it to you based on those images. So it really depends on how big you are on privacy. So it's a good thing if you want something for free, but there's a give and take here because it's not really free. So we're going to move on to the next trucking app. That'll give you a little bit of conversation fodder. We are talking with Payne of BigRoad. Today I have with me the product marketing manager at BigRoad, Payne. Lee, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Great. So I have heard, this is kind of the trucking app portion of the podcast. I have heard about BigRoad for quite some time, over a year. Can Can you kind of, before we talk about the app itself, can we talk a little bit about the history about how all this got started?
Yeah, certainly. So we were founded back in 2012. Essentially what happened at the time is a small group of people interested in creating something new for the trucking industry, especially around this emerging trend towards using mobile phones, tablets, that kind of thing in trucks. And at the time, we weren't exactly sure what would be the best thing to focus on. But we kind of put together this app in 2012, and it had some features including, driver logs, document scanning and sending. It had a map with traffic and launchers for various other trucking apps, and got it out there and sort of allowed some organic traffic to find it on the Android store, and kind of listen to the feedback from the trucking industry to find out, what are drivers actually using here? What are they liking? And we landed on driver logs being kind of the number one thing that they were using it for. And so we took that concept and we really focused more on driver logs, hours of service, and iterated on that a bunch of times with lots of feedback from drivers to create this really easy to use replacement for paper logs. So that's really how it started back in 2012.
Right off the top, I can see I've downloaded the app. I'm kind of getting the new user experience, which I like to do when we talk about apps for truckers. What I see, it's about daily logs. Can you tell me more about what the app actually does besides being an electronic logbook?
Yeah, definitely. So we kind of think of the app as a bit of a dashboard for a trucker. So when you start the app, you see a sort of simple set of tools that you can use for your day-to-day work. The main focus is on hours of service, so there's an easy way to sort of switch your duty status throughout the day and keep track of that. Your logs would be automatically generated based on those changes that you make, and it gives you a very easy heads-up view of how many hours you have left, whether you're driving, on duty, how many hours or minutes you would have before your break is done, that kind of thing. But on that view, you can also see a map with traffic showing kind of what's going on around you. There's some very quick launchers that you can use, at least on the Android version, to open up various different trucking apps to help you out with specific things like weigh scales and trip planning and that sort of thing. And then there's also features around capturing documents, so you can take pictures of PODs and send them back to your fleet, that sort of thing. And also some messaging. So if your fleet is a subscriber to BigRoad, there's an in-app tool that you can use to get messages from dispatch, so that you can kind of keep all of your day-to-day activities all in one place.
I see. I was flipping through the different applications that you link up with. These are good. I mean, being able to do, of course, your fuel and do the everything from truck wash to scales to...
Yeah, we put those in there when we first launched the app because at the time there weren't actually a lot of great apps for truckers, and it was sort of a new thing to be using your smartphone to help you with your day-to-day work. So we wanted to make sure that all of the really great apps that were available were accessible through there, and kind of were not just promoting our own app, but also the idea of just using a smartphone or a tablet in your truck for your business. So that's why we included all those apps there, and we sort of curate them and revise the list over time as new apps become more popular, or there's something new and of higher value for users. We don't actually make any money off of those things. We just put them in there because they're useful.
One of the first things that I think about is, being the age that I am, I'm in my early 50s. I used to do paper logs and have still done paper logs as just recently as last month. So how has the response been to transitioning folks from paper to smartphone?
Yeah, this is definitely an area where we were surprised because we had heard from a lot of drivers that we talked to before even launching the app that electronic logs were something they didn't like, that they just got in the way, they made your business harder, made you earn less money, and we tried to approach it in a way where it's just easier to create your log, and it's just as flexible as paper. So the app is actually designed to work a lot like paper works. You can edit anything that you have in there in terms of drive time, on-duty time, off-duty time. You can put anything you want in any of the fields, and what the app does is it tells you when you're doing things that might cause you to have a violation, but it doesn't prevent you from doing them, because the worst thing that we heard about electronic logs from drivers is that they're getting in your way all the time. They're keeping you from doing things that you need to do. And there's all kinds of exceptional situations that you run into on the road where you just have to do it. And on paper, of course, you can write anything you want. So we wanted to keep the spirit of that and at the same time make it possible to create these driver logs in a way that the result is perfect and it looks just right, despite having that flexibility.
When you were talking about the logs themselves, you mentioned they were editable. So, and I know that's one of the big arguments besides wanting to be able to fudge on the logs or wanting to do this, that, and the other and have a little freedom to be not legal is pretty much, it's pretty much what exactly guys are talking about when they say I want to fudge. They want the ability to be not legal. But when you talk about logs, and this is the big thing that I have had, is when you start that 14-hour clock, you can't stop it. And what if you start it 15 minutes from now, you realize they're not going to load me, I should have never started that thing.
Yeah, so BigRoad actually allows you to change those times when you go on duty. There's no limitations there, and you can kind of think of it like it's just an electronic version of a paper log. So technically speaking, there's different rules and regulations around how logging works, and if you're connected to the engine and you follow a set of regulations called AOBRD, or Automatic Onboard Recording Device, then there are limitations on what you can edit. But if you follow the paper logging rules, there's no limitation on how you can change your logs over time. And so BigRoad, as it exists today, it primarily does that. It's just like paper. So that's how we accomplish that ability to edit, is that it's really no different from how you can edit a paper log. And that's been one of the, I think, big reasons why we've had so many drivers download and use the app. I mean, we have over 250,000 downloads so far, and a very active user base, probably because of that. It doesn't get in your way. It allows you the same flexibility you're used to.
This is a way to transition, and also it's a way to keep your logs nice and neat. Am I?
Very much so, yeah. You don't have to worry about handwriting issues or any of those little mistakes. Things like adding up your hours wrong. Those are the sorts of things that are the most common mistakes, form and manner errors, right? So that's really the main thing that BigRoad prevents is those sorts of things.
Does the app itself have the ability to record your pre-trip inspections?
Yes, it does, actually. You can do a vehicle inspection anytime during the day. You can essentially inspect either trucks or trailers, and the app remembers what inspections you've done in the past and odometer values to try to make it as easy as possible to pre-fill fields.
Great. One area that I see on here, it says when you go to the messages area, it says to check in. Can you explain to me what that is?
Yeah, the check-in feature is a way that you can share your location with anybody. So the app is constantly following your GPS location in order partially just to fill out your logs so you don't have to type in the names of locations where you make duty status changes. So we also give you the ability to email that location to somebody, and that can be useful if you want to let dispatch know where you are, if there's a problem. It can also be useful if, for example, you wanted to let your family know where you are at some time. It's just a quick and easy way to share your location right from within the app.
Tell me about when I download the app itself and I am a single owner operator versus, let's say that I have a fleet of 7 trucks. What's the differences I'm going to be looking at there?
Yeah, so the way the app works is it's free for anyone to download and use for their own personal logs as long as they like. The mobile app is free. And what you can do is if you run a fleet and you have a few drivers, and we have customers that range everywhere between single owner operators up to hundreds of trucks, then you can sign up for our web application. And if you do that, then you can automatically get all of the driver logs, all of the documents, all the vehicle inspection reports and everything all on one sort of central interface through your web browser. So you can log into BigRoad, it's app.bigroad.com, and see all of that data all in one location, which makes it much, much easier to run your fleet as opposed to getting emails of logs or paper logs or whatever it happens to be piecemeal from each different driver.
Well, from what I see here, the user interface on this is very user-friendly. It's very good. It's easy to maneuver through. I was impressed with the app when I first saw it come out, and the improvements that BigRoad has made have just made it better. You guys are getting ready for the big mandate. So that, I guess that's the big buzz around there, is let's make sure everything's right.
Yeah, that's definitely top of mind for us right now. So when this new electronic logging device or ELD mandate comes down and drivers are required to have an engine connected log, we want to make sure we're ready for that. So we introduced a new feature called DashLink this year, and the idea there is that you can now get a small hardware device from BigRoad that plugs into the diagnostic port underneath the dash of your truck. It's like a 5-minute install, and that allows us to get engine data from the truck wirelessly transmitted to the mobile device, your cell phone or your tablet. And so it's going to allow us to provide this ELD compliant solution without having to have a huge investment in hardware. And the plan is to offer that for $10 a month on top of our normal subscription fee. No additional hardware costs involved in that beyond the $10 a month.
And what is the normal subscription fee right now?
The normal subscription fee is $15 a month per user. So that's per driver, or if you have dispatchers or other administrators in your fleet.
One thing that I can say is BigRoad is making life on the road a lot easier, especially with this ELD mandate on the doorstep. You guys have really put it together really, really well. I've been a fan. I'm still a fan. Lee, I appreciate you coming on board and being on the Apps4Truckers podcast. Hopefully we'll talk to you soon, and if you got any great announcements coming up, feel free to holler at us. We want to know.
Yeah, it was a pleasure to be on here, and I hope that we will be talking again soon.
Oh no, here he goes again. The Apps4Truckers commentary.
Well, I got the chance to talk with Ellen Voie of the Women in Trucking Association. Sit back and take a listen to the interview. May have a few things in there that you don't know about women in trucking, or if you've never heard of women in trucking, there's a lot for you to hear. So take a listen. Ellen, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Tim. Thanks.
Great. So up in the lovely state of Wisconsin, how's your weather today?
It's actually beautiful, sunny, and breezy, so can't complain.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you agreeing to come on the Apps4Truckers commentary. We kind of do a wide range of things, and you have the dubious honor of being the first woman on the Apps4Truckers commentary, so you will hold that dubious honor forever.
Well, I'm honored. Thank you.
Today, I want to talk about the state of women in the transportation industry, but first of all, We talked the other day, and one of the things that I said that I wanted to really throw out there is, I know it's a question that's on some truckers' mind. It may not be on all of them. Here's the question for just the average trucker out there, women or men, does not matter. What does Women in Trucking do? What does the organization do?
Well, in one sentence, I would say that our mission is to increase the percentage of women employed in the trucking industry. So our mission itself is actually threefold, and that's to encourage the employment of women in the trucking industry, but also to address any obstacles that might keep women from either entering the industry or succeeding, and finally to celebrate success and celebrate pioneers who have been in the industry and who have come before us and forged a way and have made a name for themselves. So it's basically to encourage and support women in this industry.
So you mentioned obstacles. What kind of obstacles are we talking about here?
Actually, women in this industry have a lot of obstacles. And if you were to ask me, and I do get asked this often, what challenges do women face that men don't? I will tell you none. What I will tell you is that we prioritize differently. So some of the obstacles that women have are we have to deal with safety and security and amenities. So we help women in regard to safety around truck stops, making sure that we're working with the truck manufacturers on a device so that when they're sleeping in the cab of their truck, no one can enter the truck. Maybe the horns will blow or some kind of alarm. We also talk to them about situational awareness at truck stops. We work with the truck manufacturers on ergonomics so that there's adaptability in the pedals and the seats and the seat belts and steering so that women can be just as comfortable in the cab of a truck as their male counterparts. We also, one of the challenges that women face is not knowing that they're wanted in this industry. So we came out with a Girl Scout transportation patch to introduce young girls to careers in transportation. So a lot of girls now, 7, 8, 9, 10, are learning about the transportation industry and about careers, anything from engineers to drivers to dispatchers, safety, things like that. So I would say a lot of the challenges are how do you get women interested in this industry, and then how do you attract them, and then how do you keep them and make sure that they're safe and comfortable and successful.
Well, I know that when I've heard you speak in the past, you've made it a real point to emphasize that this is not just about women in trucks. This is about women actually having positions in the transportation industry, not just being a trucker.
That's a great point, because I like to say that we represent the women who design the trucks, sell the trucks, fix the trucks, own the trucks, dispatch the trucks, and drive the trucks. So we represent everyone from, the driver to the mechanic to the owner of the company. So, and actually, I have to remind people that about 16% of our members are men. And why would men join Women in Trucking? It's because they believe in our mission and they've seen some of the successes we've had. And one of them, recently a male driver said he really appreciates the fact that we encouraged TA Petro to put big shower heads, dryers, and big fluffy towels in their showers. So not just women enjoy the amenities, the men are enjoying the same, some of the same successes that we've had as well. So we're not just for women, but we're about women.
Well, I do know that truck stops have made great strides in the last 20 to 30 years. I'm of the school that I came in when it was still a little bit old school in there. When I started driving, when my dad took me out for the first time, I saw my first group shower. And I thought it was just in Convoy. It was not. It was, I can't tell you where it was, but I could tell you I didn't want to go back. But
and you're right.
Yeah.
That's the way it used to be. It was like a locker room shower in the truck
it was.
stop. Yep.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, they've come a long way. They've come a long way, haven't they? I do remember those showers. I used to be married to an owner-operator, and I'd go out on the road with him, and he would have to stand at the door to the shower and not let anyone in while I quickly took a shower and got changed again. So yeah, we've come a long way.
Talking about an indoctrination into trucking. Wow, you got it there.
Yes.
So presenting the image, you look for women who have served in the trucking industry, whether it be by driving or in administration or in management or in design, all these different areas, and put them in a place where people can see that women can hold a very significant position in trucking.
That's correct. Right now, women hold about 14% of management positions in the trucking industry. Well, outside of the trucking industry, women hold 52% of management positions. And it's been proven that the more diversity you have at the upper levels, the higher your income will be and the greater your profits will be. So it's to a carrier's advantage to get more women involved at higher levels and decision-making positions so that their company will be more profitable.
So going on to the actual, we've touched on a little bit of commentary, but the commentary question is today, 2015, even though podcasts are kind of a different animal than radio broadcasts, this is kind of like we're making a footprint in history here, because people may be in 2017 and download this podcast. So let's give them a good picture of the state of women in trucking in May of 2015.
Contrary to what people might think, the trucking industry really does want more women. I think that we don't make our industry look as inviting to women because they see movies, they see mostly male truck drivers, they see some ads that might not portray women in a positive way, and even the recruiting ads sometimes, they're not as inclusive in regard to gender. So the industry is very much welcoming for women, but there's some things that we have to do to change it. And that's what we do, is we call attention to some of those things. For example, the seat belts on the tractor trailers. The National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health came to us and said, are you aware that female drivers wear their seat belts less often than men? Which really goes against the fact that women are more concerned with safety. And so we started checking that out, and the women said, well, yeah, it's uncomfortable to have a shoulder strap on you for 11 hours at a time. So why can't we develop a seatbelt with a shoulder strap that is comfortable? Mm-hmm. So when we start challenging the carriers and the manufacturers and the truck stops and say, this is what we need, this is how we can bring more women into this industry, and this is how we can keep women, they do listen. I'm very pleased with the fact that this industry says, you know what, we can do that.
So the state of women in trucking right now, let's take it in the last 5 years. Do you think we've actually improved, or do you think we've regressed some?
Well, during the recession, a lot of women who were in a team configuration got out of the truck because the guys weren't even getting enough miles, or as teams they weren't. So it dropped slightly. We've never hit 6% as far as government Department of Labor numbers, but we've come out with our own Women in Trucking Index, and so we're surveying the largest carriers and the top carriers, private and for hire, to see what percentage of female drivers they actually do employ, so we know where we're starting. So we want to push that needle, and we want to see it move beyond 6% into 12, 13, 14, 20%. And some carriers have seen those kind of goals by being more sensitive to what their female drivers need and want. So we know it's possible.
So the average listener here, let's just say we have the average trucker, let's just say a guy, don't want to be sexist about it, but let's say since the majority right now is men and probably will be for some time, let's say
Correct.
The average trucker, the average man trucker, what can he do to encourage more women in trucking?
That's a great question. First of all, I would say to the current drivers out there, if you hear a male harassing a female, either on a CB or at a truck stop, step in and call them out and tell them to stop. But more importantly, make sure that you treat any female drivers out there as if they have a right to be there and that they're earning a living just like you are. Because I actually get emails and calls from drivers who think that women shouldn't be in trucks. And even though those calls are very few and far between, if you ask female drivers if they've been approached by their counterparts and told that they shouldn't be out there on the road, a lot of them will tell you that they've experienced that. So I would say to male drivers, accept women, don't assume that they can't do their job, and treat them like you would a family member, an aunt or mom or sister or cousin or whatever, and just treat them with respect.
Well, it's because they are someone's aunt or mom or daughter or sister. That is all.
You are correct.
That is all there is to it. They are that to someone.
That's right.
Okay.
You're very right.
I'm stepping out on a limb here. Ellen is telling men to be men. Man up, boys.
I guess.
Man up out there and take up for people who have the same right as you to be out there.
That's right. I can't say that, but you can.
I can say that. Okay, so what kind of events are coming up that Ellen Voie will be involved in?
Well, we're having our first ever conference in September, and I'm very excited about that because it's going to be about gender-related issues, but not just gender-related issues, everything from building relationships in the trucking industry to, we have Daphne Jefferson, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administrator, Deputy Administrator, speaking. So our first ever conference is coming up. I attend a lot of trade shows and get to speak at a lot of events to talk about women in trucking and some of the things we're doing. So we have a calendar on our website. I keep pretty busy when I'm able to. We always have a booth at the Great American Trucking Show, and we usually host a reception, and we're planning on doing that right now.
So another question that comes to mind, Ellen, is what does it mean to be a member of Women in Trucking, the organization?
Well, as a nonprofit association, we're supported by the dues that our members pay. So when someone becomes a member, we send them a weekly newsletter. It's called the WIT E-News. They get our publication, our magazine, Redefining the Road, and they get discounts on products and services. But more importantly, they get invited to our networking events, especially our Salute to the Women Behind the Wheel in March, and other events that we hold throughout the year. So being a member of Women in Trucking allows you to connect with other members, but more importantly, to learn from our other members. And we have secrets to success on our website and things like that. So it's important to us that people actually support us by paying dues. And for a driver, that's $25 a year.
So, Ellen, I appreciate you taking the time to come on board here and talk with us about women in trucking and the state of women in trucking right now. How can people get in touch with you or find out more about women in trucking?
Thanks, Tim. They can go to our website, which is just womenintrucking.org, womenintrucking.org. And everything they need to know is on there, and they can even join online.
Thank you, Ellen. I appreciate what you're doing for the industry, and I appreciate you taking some time out to talk with us.
Thank you so much. And anytime you want me to be on the show, just let me know.
And now presenting the featured podcast.
Well, the trucker podcast that we're featuring on podcast number 13 here is Trucker Dump. You can find it at abouttruckdriving.com, or you can actually put in the Google search engine. You can put in there Trucker Dump, and it'll come up. That is run by Todd McCann. Kind of give you a one man's perspective on a lot of things going on out there. He is an over-the-road driver and has a great perspective about a lot of things and sometimes quite comical. So check him out, abouttruckdriving.com, or you can put Trucker Dump into the Google search engine, and that should pull it up right there. The other podcast that we're going to talk about is not a trucker podcast, but it's kind of interesting that we're talking about it now, and I'll tell you why. First of all, the name of the podcast is Serial. That's S-E-R-I-A-L, like serial number or serial killer. This is a podcast that was put out by This American Life, NPR. I'm not a real big NPR fan. I kind of got burned out on it many years ago, and I haven't traveled back. That being said, though, this podcast called Serial is probably one of the most downloaded podcasts in history, I would say. It is about a young man who, when he was 17 years old, was convicted of murder of his ex-girlfriend, and some facts have come to light, and they go back and reinvestigate the case. Now, it's just a bunch of reporters doing this, and they're following it throughout the whole process. It was, I believe it was actually recorded back in 2012 to 2013. And what the really interesting part about it is they start off with talking about how good is your memory, because they're digging back to 1999 when the atrocity was committed. So all of this to be said, they actually investigate it. And recently in the news, if you have seen anything in the news about the podcast named Serial, the young man who 15 years ago was convicted of this crime has successfully been able to bring the trial back up because of some problems that were going on. His lawyer got into a bunch of mess, and it's a very interesting podcast. You will listen to the first one, and either you'll want to listen to all 11 of them back to back, or it will work on you for a little bit, and all of a sudden you'll say, I'm going to put this on my regular listening, and you'll be actually looking forward to seeing what they find out in the next episode. I've got the link to the podcast in the show notes. If you have never heard Serial, this is a new thing for podcasts. And I say new thing because not everybody has caught on to this kind of thing of seasons and episodes, kind of like we're doing with Real Life Trucker. So even though that was done back in 2012, it just hasn't caught on very well yet. But some people are catching on to it. So check it out. It will be very entertaining, and at least for the most part, it will actually get you to look at things differently, give you a different perspective on maybe a lot of things that you see every day. Well, sometimes when we have interviews that are really good, I don't really like to chop them up that much because you lose a lot of what we were talking about. So since this one is run a little bit long, we're going to go to a part 2 of Apps for Truckers podcast number 13. So stay tuned. In a couple of days, we will have part 2 up, and you will hear the Box of Chocolates interview with Jewel Jones of Over the Road Apparel, as well as Tom Kirk with Road Tested Living for our road test segment. So if you're on the feed, it'll pop up right in the feed where everything else does. It will also be on the Apps4Truckers.com website. It'll be on YouTube, and it'll be on LiveTrucking.com, both their website and their YouTube channel as well. So stay tuned. Hey, I wanted to tell you, thanks a bunch for listening, and we'll see you in part 2.